American genuine arms reduction agreement with the Soviets. The start of this was put on edge. Soviet leaders seriously believed that Reagan's dream was fully possible to advance American technology. To compensate for our plans, the USSR poured increasingly greater sums of money into the arms race to stay ahead. This action, however, was devastating to the Soviet Union's already suffering economy. Nothing like its American counterpart.
First video is about the Soviets having food vodka.
With the death of Konstantin Chernenko, the current Soviet General Secretary, the rule by the old leaders was over. A new, more beautiful and promising leader named
We're going to stop it there. We're going to watch the Reagan stuff. So, the videos I actually have at the end are way better than the videos I have at the beginning. I realized that when I going on last night. We actually have some kind of cheesy videos at the end, but I think you'll enjoy them. Some criticisms of the Strategic Defense Initiative. Again, I think it's important because so much of this is just mind-boggling. SDI is literally just, I shouldn't say literally just, the fancy name, the program that Reagan rolled out that said we should invest billions of dollars in the ability to destroy any missile that heads to the United States. Okay? We can do that by air, and we need to also do that by space. Okay? So the Strategic Defense Initiative included more than space defense, but that was where a lot of the criticisms came from, because it's the first time that we said, hey, we need things in outer space to shoot down missiles. Okay? Three major criticisms. The first is that people are like, if we put these things up in space, we're going to create a space arms race. Okay? It is the first time, we certainly have military satellites, but those are benign, right? Those are like weapons. Okay? Brilliant Pebbles, the program, was putting a weapon in space to shoot down other weapons. Okay? So people were concerned that we would militarize space. If we're going to put missiles up in space, probably other countries would as well. The second is people are like, it's not technologically feasible, which is kind of why the Brilliant Pebbles program in 1994 was shut down. Lack of money, lack of time. The third is countermeasures. Anybody know what the phrase countermeasures means? Yes, go ahead.
Something you do because someone else did something?
Yes. Okay, so here's where this gets tricky. So we have military satellites up in space. Okay? There are anti-satellites that can destroy those satellites. There are then countermeasures that can destroy the ASAT. Okay, so let's say we put Brilliant Pebbles up. Brilliant Pebbles, weapon in space to disarm a weapon heading to us. So let's say North Korea shoots a missile at us. If we have Brilliant Pebbles up in space, Brilliant Pebbles can shoot a missile to knock down the North Korean missile. Well, do you think the North Koreans, if they know we have Brilliant Pebbles in space, are going to be like, oh, all right. No, they develop countermeasures to disable the Brilliant Pebbles, which can include other missiles to take down and sideswipe Brilliant Pebbles. Are you following on this? So now we have something that takes out the defense of an oncoming missile. Okay? So countermeasures literally would disable all of the defense capabilities that we have. Okay? Do you see that that's now a third layer? Okay, so you see why the question of protecting our space assets is so large. Because the protection needs the protection. Okay? I know, I'm crazy. I have some examples of countermeasures. Decoy missiles is an example of a countermeasure. Very easy to do. Okay, it's not like Brilliant Pebbles is sitting up there with a bunch of missiles to knock down the North Korean missile. North Korea probably has more ballistic missiles on the ground than Brilliant Pebbles up in space has to shoot down the missiles. So one countermeasure is literally North Korea could just send up some decoy missiles. Allow Brilliant Pebbles to shoot its missiles that it's storing up in outer space, but eventually it's going to run out of ammo, right? Like a gun only has so many chambers for bullets. So North Korea will just send up a couple of ballistic missiles as decoys, have Brilliant Pebbles shoot it down, and then shoot the missile that would have finally attacked the United States. That's fairly easy even for this English teacher to understand, right? Okay, that a module in space can't hold infinite number of missiles. Probably North Korea on the ground has more missiles that can shoot at us than an orbital module in space can deflect or defend us from. Okay, so countermeasures, huge problem. The fact that other countries can outsmart, even though they have brilliant pebbles, right, can outsmart our missile defense systems. Time Magazine, obviously lots of criticisms about the FDI program. This is just an example of a Time Magazine issue. I'm not sure if you will be able to make out the cartoon, but certainly Reagan's FDI program would be vital as a cartoon does. Obviously, Vietnam was fresh in the memory and was a huge failure, foreign policy failure, for lack of better terms. So people are like, oh yeah, the same people that brought us Vietnam bringing us the anti-ballistic missile system. And so obviously all these people have goofy looks on their faces and look like they don't know what they're doing. All right, we're now going to move to a section. You all can take the notes on this however you want. We're going to apply some of the knowledge we have. We're certainly going to learn new knowledge about two central debate questions that are going to happen in any type of big space militarization throwdown. The first question or proposition literally is this: U.S. space assets are threatened. They're vulnerable. If we put military satellites up in space, they're threatened. We're going to look at the yes, they are question or side of it, and no, that the threats are insignificant side. So this is literally going to kind of set up for you and contextualize a lot of the stuff that we talked about in the form of a debate. There are some videos incorporated in this too, and I actually like the videos in this section. So we're going to do the yes, they are. If I were going to take notes on this, I probably would have written that, and I'll go back if y'all need to get it down again. The question, U.S. space assets are threatened, and then maybe like have a dividing line and write the yes arguments on one side and no arguments on the other. Follow me on that, but it's up to you. Did everybody get the question down? The resolution? U.S. space assets are threatened. So the yes side, we're going to talk about a couple of things. The first primary argument, if you were going to have a debate and you were defending that space assets are threatened, is that our space power will inevitably decline. The reason why our space assets are threatened is because our space power, we are clearly ahead of all the other countries. Okay? That's not going to last. If you were going to defend the side that U.S. space assets are threatened, you will want to make the argument that U.S. space power will inevitably decline. And there's a few reasons for that. So these are all like sub-points. You see, maybe you want to flow this a little bit like a debate. Okay, these are the sub-points. The first is, you can argue that Russia is a space power threat. Our space assets are threatened because our power is going to decline because Russia is a looming space power threat. We know that Russia has a very long history in space technology. Okay? During the Cold War, they launched a bunch of anti-satellite weapons tests. We don't know as much about the Russian ASAT program as we do about the Chinese space asset program, but we know they have one. Okay? Russia has researched what's called space mines, M-I-N-E-S, like space mines, like landmines, as potential counters to a lot of our strategic defense systems. I don't know all the ins and outs of what a space mine is, but that's a program that Russia has developed and researched that we have not. So you may want to look up more detail on what space mines are. There's a 2007 book that's a little bit old, obviously, 2007, a little bit old, that I thought is very, very good. The author's last name is Oberg, O-B-E-R-G, and the book is called The Dozen Space Weapons Myths. The Dozen Space Weapons Myths. You may want to check out this book if you're going to do a lot of work on space militarization this year. 2007, Oberg is the author, The Dozen Space Weapons Myths. He claims that the West, i.e. the United States, has really underestimated Russia's ASAT programs. Okay? And that leaves us very vulnerable to Russia being a space threat. Because we haven't seen them do a lot, like we saw China with their 2007 launch, because we haven't seen a lot of that, it's easy for us to say, they're not doing much. Oberg says, that is a myth. Right? And that is a myth that's going to be very costly for us. And so he argues there were lots of documents released after the breakup of the Soviet Union that refer to a killer satellite that Russia has. You may want to Google that later. Killer satellite. That is a satellite that's way, at the time, much more enhanced than anything the United States had. A killer satellite. Okay? Russia is the only other nation besides the United States, the only other nation state that has a space surveillance system. Is that Russia's space surveillance system, an SSS? can do up to 50,000 observations and images a day. 50,000 observations and images. Russia's got some capability and some tech. Okay? So that's the first thing you can say. U.S. space power is going to decline. Russia's a space power threat will continue to be. Who else do we think is a space power threat probably, which would be subpoint number 2? Yup. China, we already studied and learned about that ASAT test in 2007. Our RMA, what does RMA stand for again?
Revolutionary
Military Affairs. That paradigm that our U.S. military has been under the last few decades, some argue has forced China to adopt a very similar strategy. Okay? And obviously we don't, just like China doesn't know the ins and outs of our U.S. military capabilities, but many people argue that China is also under its own RMA, which is a little bit scary, meaning that they are really developing a lot into advanced technology systems. An author by the name of Teresa Hitchens, Hitchens, writes a lot about Chinese space militarization. She has a lot of books and articles, so it's not just one book I can give it. But as an author, Teresa, there's no H in her first name, Teresa, Hitchens, Hitchens, argues that China is the only other country in the world besides the U.S. that actually has ongoing political debates within lawmakers and so forth about the value of space weaponization. Meaning they have ongoing dialogue about the value of not just anti-satellite capabilities, but offensive space weaponization. Okay? That's a little scary. Not because China is some evil country or entity, but it's scary knowing that other nation states are thinking about the value and a constant political dialogue about lawmakers about the weaponization of space. There's also some arguments, and although India is our friend, our ally, that India is an emerging space power. That doesn't mean that they're a threat, but it means that they could be. Okay? Lots of resources, and you all probably learned about this yesterday, building up its civilian and military space program in India. Okay? On the military side, they have satellite capabilities, space control defense capabilities. They got a little concerned after the Chinese space asset explosion in 2007. Okay? They have shown interest in developing directed energy weapons, which are known as DEWs. Directed energy weapons, which is kind of a gnarly type of weapon that obviously uses very intense amount of energy as its bullet, for lack of a better term. Okay? We're going to do the second main argument. So the first main argument under this proposition was that space power is inevitably declining. We're going to do the second one, and then we'll take a break. So hang on with me. So we're going to go back to the yes, they are. Remember the question was space assets are threatened? We first looked at the category of arguments that U.S. space power is declining because other countries may take over. Okay, so the second primary argument is that our space assets are threatened because the ability to threaten them is a technological feasibility. There's going to be lots of debate on this year's topic about whether or not the technology, not just for space militarization, but for moon mining, all that, is feasible. So you're going to have the debate about whether or not the space weaponization, the ability to threaten our space assets with those weapons, is that technologically feasible? Okay, obviously, the side of this question would be yes, they are. It's going to be kind of hard to argue that ASATs aren't technologically feasible. Okay, we've seen them in work. Okay. So, if you are talking about, yes, our U.S. space assets are threatened by ASATs, so U.S. space assets, the things that we have up in space, and military satellites primarily, are threatened because ASATs are feasible. We know we can disable, our satellites can be disabled. We've already talked a lot about that. It is estimated, I think I've already given the statistic, that 30 nations have the capability to use low-power lasers. 30 nations have the power to use low-grade lasers to at least degrade and mess up the sensors we have on our satellites. We can disrupt our images and distort the data that we receive and so forth. Okay? We also know that there is the capability for countries to use directed energy weapons. Not a lot of countries have this capability, but the directed energy weapons are being developed primarily by Russia and China. India has shown an interest in developing those. And then we've already talked about jamming, but I thought it was important to kind of list these out here again in this kind of debate format. Lots of countries have the ability to jam. It's radio jamming. That happens, you know, you can be driving and